What if every time you died, another version of you woke up? In Enemy Me, Dr. Pete Walker isn't just a man. He's a series of increasingly unstable clones on a desperate mission against his greatest creation. His former friend turned enemy, Forrest Taylor. 20 years after his original self's death, clone number 6 wakes in a hidden facility, disoriented but determined. The world outside has changed, but the real shock lies within. The previous clones are dead. One was a suicide bomber, and he's now the last true copy. Or is he? As he struggles to rediscover his identity, he finds love, memory gaps, and a terrifying truth. The cloning project wasn't just about saving lives. It was about reshaping humanity. Worse, clone number 18, Omega, has one purpose: total annihilation if all else fails. Faced with betrayal, corporate god complexes, and ethical implosions, the newest clone must choose: become his own man or finish what Pete Prime started, before the last clone wakes and ends everything. Enemy Me is a deeply philosophical, sci-fi thriller filled with suspense, ethical dilemmas, and emotional intensity. Rebirth is only the beginning. Identity is fluid. But how many versions of you can exist before you're no one at all?
Chapter 1. Pete had slipped past the first set of guards undetected. The second set would be the problem. He lifted the binoculars up to his eyes and scanned the structure in front of him. A service door off to one side. He checked his watch. It was 10 past midnight, and the guard shift change was about to happen in 3 minutes. That was his window of opportunity. Get in, get to the freight elevator, enter the code, and take the thing to the labs. There, he would set off the explosives. It would set the company back a few years, giving the others some time. He checked his vest straps by giving them a quick yank. The pack was a bit heavy, but what did you expect from 20 kilograms of pent? Pete Walker woke up with a start. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not this place, not this time. He reached up and felt the oxygen mask tightly over his mouth and nose. That was good, but he still wasn't supposed to be here. He couldn't. Damn, another failure. And with that, another chance at redemption, he supposed. Maybe justice, too. All of which didn't matter at the moment. Something or someone had killed him. He took a deep breath and tested his eyes. The filtered light had a green tint to it, so the stinging shock of using his eyes for the first time wasn't so overly painful, just maybe annoying. He took another deep breath and tested his hands. Each finger flexed. That was good. He looked up at a blinking display board over his head. It flashed, "Purge in progress, please stand by." He looked around and spotted the readout displays to his right. Little monitors flashed and displayed numbers and text. One display was counting down. Another was scrolling odd bits of information like, "You can do it, this time for sure. So close yet so far. It's time to leave, prepare." That he thought odd. He looked over at the monitor that was displaying a countdown of sorts. Then he remembered. Purge in progress. He looked up and saw 2 metal rings. He grabbed them. Seconds later, he felt the floor underneath his feet vanish. The green-tinted fluid slipped away from his eyesight. He remembered the process now. He waited until the fluid completely drained. The system would cycle through several procedures. Purge was first. Wash was second. Release was third. He counted to 3 and the floor came back. Seconds later, the container he was in filled with some clear fluid. Water, he thought. It was warm and turbulent, like a washing machine. Minutes ticked by as the chamber filled, circulated, and drained several times. The little countdown display kept track and reminded him he was not the original. Intellectually, he understood he was not the original. Waking up in a thick green goo fluid reinforced that too. When the countdown display reached 0, he was hit with a blast of hot air. It whirled around him rapidly. He was dry in seconds. He lowered himself far enough to feel the grid floor and tested his legs. Strong, firm, stable. He let go of the overhead rings, and with his weight fully supported by his feet, he unsnapped his harness. There was something he was supposed to remember. The cloning process was perfect. The memory transfer, not so much. There were gaps for sure, but were they important pieces missing? He looked around the cylindrical chamber, trying to spot something that would trigger the memory, an important, vital memory. The mask? No, it was still on his face, supplying oxygen. The readouts? No. The grid floor? Couldn't be, but close. The chamber door? The door. That was it. He reached out and pushed. Locked. The keypad next to the door? Embarrassment hit. Of course it was the keypad. Getting out of here was important. He let his hand drift over the pad, and fingers pushed in a code he hadn't known he knew. Nevertheless, the inner door lock mechanism worked, and he heard a loud, audible click. The glass door whooshed up out of sight. Pete stepped out and felt a chill. There were 5 empty chambers to the right of his, and 12 chambers of different sizes to the left. He thought, 5 tries, 5 failures, 5 deaths. But there was still something he couldn't remember. Of course, it was going to nag at him for a while. Then his stomach rumbled. He remembered what an empty stomach felt like. In this case, everything was going to be remembered and used for the very first time. He made his way to the kitchen. Okay, he said out loud. That was easy. But if I remember this so clearly, why do I think I'm forgetting something? He walked through the entryway and found a sandwich waiting for him. Interesting. One of 2 things are going on here. He thought, I made this for myself, or someone else is here. He stepped up to the table. The sandwich was cut diagonally. That was his clue to himself that it was meant for him. A glass of water and a computer tablet were next to the sandwich. Pete sat down and started eating. Thin slices of turkey, Havarti cheese, romaine lettuce, some sliced tomatoes, and deli horseradish sauce embedded in baguette bread. He tapped the tablet. The screen brightened the local news agency. In big, bold letters, suicide bomber exploded high explosives on the 30th floor of the Taylor building. 30 died, 120 injured. Jesus, Pete uttered after a bite. He committed suicide by explosive vest. Pity, but it had to have been number 5. Why else would he set the tablet to show this first? But 30 died? Was it really necessary? He himself, of course, did not set the bomb off. He did not kill all those people. But it was him who did. Not physically. He did it. The same mind did. Maybe. Which of course begged the question, was he the same person? I'm a clone, yes. But am I number 5? He noticed the date of the article. A 20-year separation between himself and Prime. 6 clones in 20 years. Short life expectancy at the very least. He finished the sandwich and followed it with a glass of water. He made his way through the passageway to the bathroom. Pete Prime had some serious money to build this place. It was large and self-sustaining, it seemed. He walked through the bathroom door and found the urinal. He walked up to it, looked down, and laughed. Arrogant bastard gave himself a bigger dick. Well, why not? He, and by default, himself, were brilliant. Decades ahead of everyone in the field of gene therapy and cloning. Maybe next time he'd clone himself as a woman. A woman. The 12 chambers of different sizes. Several were kid size. He didn't, did he? Pete finished, washed his hands, and made his way back into the chamber room. He hurried past his chamber and pried through the glass doors of the others. He did do it. The next 2 chambers housed females. The next 3 after that had 1 boy and 2 girls. They looked to be about 16. The one after that had a Pete that looked 6 feet tall. Number 13 was a dwarf. Pretty heartless, he thought, but Prime didn't know what the future held. He could walk outside and find a world full of little people. Number 14 and 15 was him, but different, African and Asian. Interesting. Prime was mixed, but to create clones in specific races? 16 and 17 were white females, 1 blonde, 1 ginger. Number 18 was at least 7 feet tall and extremely bulky. Prime figured if 18 was needed, the end of days was called for. 18 would be the final run. The big guy would do the job by brute force. That was something to fear. Chapter 2. Forrest Taylor looked down at chaos. Even though he was 130 stories up, the many vehicles on ground level could still be seen. Little people, little trucks, cars, and ambulances at work. A suicide bomber managed to enter the building and destroy a highly guarded secret part of the building. Heads would roll figuratively, if not literally. It had been 20 years since he and Pete founded Forever Life, Inc. This was his flagship project, which was now set back a few months at best. Absolutely a pity. A new class of drugs, transgenetics, finished the FDA trials. The Level 1 and Level 2 drugs were slotted for Phase 2 of clinical rollout. Tests had been going well and on schedule for Phase 3. The project was not in jeopardy, but the shareholders were nervous. Fuck 'em, he thought. The vultures. Waiting to make a killing. They hadn't thought of the big picture. No, just only the Bitcoin that would give them uber luxury. This was beyond simple gene therapy. This ultimately was immortality. This was transformation at the gene level. Every parent's wildest dream come true. Smart babies, brave babies, strong babies, ultra beautiful babies. A transgenetic pill for any and everything. Cancer? Gone. Colds? Gone. Bad eyesight? Corrected. All with a set of pills. All engineered to work with the individual patient. For a price, of course. The new Affordable Care Act would cover Level 1 and 2 of transgenetic, but not beyond. Levels 3 and above would be the moneymakers. Take some pills before bed, go into a coma, wake up several days later, different, but the same. Baldness, obesity, impotence, weak, frail, ugly, all of the above. No more. Cured. Brilliant. Forrest turned and sat back down at his desk. The email message waiting light blinked in the upper right corner. He clicked the open message icon on a small area of his desktop. Photos of the bomber appeared. It was Pete. The man was very insistent. How many clones had he made? 7? How many more would he throw at him? The room chime sounded. Forrest said, "Enter." Gordon Piper, his head geneticist, walked through the door. Thank goodness the blast hadn't harmed him. Gordon was smart, not brilliant, but had enough intuitive insight to make rather startling leaps, in theory, which translated into good data, results, and money. It was probably his assistant, Sandra Spaulding, who ultimately cracked the code. But levels 3 and 4 were most likely a direct result of his unorthodox way of solving puzzles. "Yes, Gordon." "Mr. Taylor, worst news yet. The entire floor destroyed. All personnel lost." "Pity," Forrest said. "We'll have to send out condolence letters, of course." Gordon nodded. And the data? Saved off-site. The equipment has been destroyed. That'll take months to reconstruct. Equipment gone. Forrest thought a moment. We'll have to go off the map next time, or bury the processing plants deep. Gordon nodded. It was Pete, wasn't it? Forrest nodded. We're going to have to get serious about dealing with him. Gordon nodded again. 7 clones? Yes. He'll have to modify the geno and phenotypes if he wants the clones to remain stable. Forrest nodded. He understood what Gordon was getting at. After 9 iterations, the subsequent clones would probably suffer major internal organ damage. Maybe his was the last, or next to last clone. He could only hope so. How long to start up? 8 months. That bad? Gordon nodded. We'll need to hire more talent. I'm not comfortable with the Chinese. Some of them seem to be working for other interests. Maybe the Canadians this time. I've read some rather brilliant pieces coming out of that country. I'll leave hiring and retooling up to you. I'll send an email to accounting and request they give you access to maintenance funds. 100 million enough? Gordon thought a moment. $500 million would be better. Forrest blinked several times. R&D funds, then. The board greenlighted 2 bills. If you can guarantee me a startup in 3 months, I'll okay the full amount. Let me work on that. I'd rather be accurate in a time frame than shooting in the dark. He liked that about Gordon. The man wasn't much into swaging things. He'd rather be known for at least giving a problem some thought. Forrest asked, Tomorrow too soon? Gordon smiled. About noon. I'll take the rest of the day off and work out the details. I'll leave security to work with the locals on investigating and cleaning up the mess. He turned and walked out. Forrest watched the man as he disappeared behind the closing door, cold and calloused. The nature of big business making billions. He was still in his glass house, so he refrained from casting stones, at least very large ones. Chapter 3. Pete found his way to the main computer room. So far, he remembered things both necessary and mundane. As he stepped through the doorway, the lights came on. Good morning, Dr. Walker. How are you? A Verity baritone voice seemed to come from everywhere. Pete nearly jumped. That he hadn't remembered. Not quite like that. A voice from a computer terminal, perhaps, maybe on his tablet. Morning. I read the news. You have my deepest condolences. I am a computer? There was a pause. Yes, Dr. Walker. I run the facility. Pete Prime installed me on day 1. Pete sat in the main chair. I see. There was a total of 5 computer terminals. Pete occupied the middle one. So why do I not remember you if you were installed 20 years ago? Doctor, I cannot answer that. The computer's voice was smooth. Cannot or will not? Let me rephrase my answer, please. I do not know the answer to your question. Number 5 and 2 did not remember, but 1 and 3 did. You'll find further gaps in your memory, no doubt. As you know, the cloning process is perfect. The memory transference and its means are not. Pete weighed that answer against truth and total bullshit. Fair enough. Didn't number 5 leave anything for me? The computer said, yes, he did. Several items, in fact. Pete thought the exchange creepy. The computer seemed too good with speech. You are a real person, aren't you? The silence settled in between the two for a minute. Well, you are real, aren't you? I mean, as in AI real? The center display screen came to life. His face appeared with a relaxed smile. Mike, number 5 said over his shoulder. I'm ready. Yes, George. Recording now. Number 5 cleared his voice. Number 6. Sorry I couldn't welcome you into the world personally. I should have started recording a daily log day 1, but... He shrugged. You'll discover things tend to get lost in translating, and we walkers tend to become self-absorbed. 5's smile was alarming. It was a bit unnerving to be on the receiving end. Remember that, okay? First, change your name. Odd, Pete thought. Number 5 continued. I am not Pete. Neither are you. We are our own individuals. The image leaned forward. Yes, we share memories with Pete, but we are not him. The moment you opened your eyes, you became your own person. He leaned back. Remember me as George. Keep the family name, but lose the first. Seriously, it took me several months to understand that. Kevin, number 4, told me to change my name. I fought it, just fought it. Then one day, I realized Pete and I had nothing substantive in common. I read romance. He read nonfiction. I like pistachio ice cream. He was a vanilla man. You getting the picture yet? On the surface, he felt he understood. I am unique, he thought. Well, of course, the Pete 20 years ago would have been him, but not now. He was dead, assuming the reason he lived was because he was dead, as well as numbers 1 through 5. About Mike. Don't ask if he is a real person. Mike will give you the silent treatment for days. If you did ask, apologize now. Seriously, apologize. You'll need his help. Pete said, Mike, I'm sorry. I won't question you again about being real. Mike said, Forgiven. There is more. Pete smiled. Interesting. Number 6. I'd like to tell you to forget our quest. You know, live your own life. Start a family. Have 2 1/2 kids running around. George suddenly looked 10 years older. Forrest Taylor has to be stopped. Brother 6, Forrest has to be stopped. He leaned back and looked sad. I've been fighting this bastard for 6 years now. I've been able to uncover a lot, as were the others. Kevin, Pete 3, Pete 2, and Eugene. Forrest's plan is worse than anyone can imagine. Sick bastard. Suddenly, George stood up and walked away. Mike, pause recording, please. Thanks. The image of a receding George froze in mid-step. Pete waited for a minute, then asked, Mike, something wrong with the video? No, I was waiting for you to ask. Pete paused in a thought. Waiting for me too. The video resumed. George sat back down. Okay, good. I do have your attention. Look, the cloning process is perfect. Too perfect. Do you remember this? George held up a picture of a woman. She was a redhead, light smile, white skin, clean teeth perfectly aligned. He lowered the picture and leaned in close to the screen. I didn't. I still don't. Mike had to fill me in with missing gaps in my memory. I'm not sure if the missing gaps is from the transference process or intentional intervention. All of us have this memory lapse. Mine is with Stephanie. He lifted the picture up to the camera and pulled it away. Number 7 is going to remember less than you do. Number 8, less more than 7, and so on and so on. Number 18 will remember nothing. He'll have one thought, destroy. If he wakes up, then Forrest succeeded, and all of humankind, at least in nations where the wealthy can afford the drugs, he'll have one pre-programmed thought. Soon after he wakes, he'll double in size. He'll get no last message because he won't understand. Mike will send him immediately to the surface. No help, no prep, nothing, because it won't matter. He'll destroy. He'll run the distance from here to the Taylor building and destroy. Everything. Everything. He's not number 18. He's Omega. George looked up at some part of the room. Everything. He rubbed his chin. Enough of Doomageddon. He smiled. I left you an envelope, among other things, with a list of do's and don'ts for your new life. You, my friend, are 20 years out of step. Remember that. It is no longer the 20th Dark Ages. Space travel to the moon is normal, but not by the United States. Gay marriage is the norm. So are GEMPs, genetically engineered chimps. The U.S. government gave them full citizenship 10 years ago. We've elected a black president and a woman president. Twice. The Middle East is fucked since we no longer depend on their oil, of which they have none. We export 23% of the world's oil needs, and Iran had been nuked by Israel. North Korea fell. Russia bankrupt, again, and China had a severe housing collapse, went through a depression and lost a war. You have allies on the outside. Becky will freak. Oh yes, we do love. George gave his patented alarming smile again. You also have enemies. We'll always have enemies. I gave you a list of them. There's plenty. Homeland Security is at the local level. Surveillance cameras cover 90% of the city. Androids are reality, and marijuana, prostitution, and assisted suicide are legal. What's that got to say about the country? George paused in thought. 2 more things. Trust Mike. He's been watching and protecting us for a number of years. 20 for you, 15 for me. He knows everything. He's our mentor. The second thing is... George got teary-eyed. He bit his lower lip. I left you a memory card. Technology has made the transference better and easier, but not perfect. You'll get most of what I lived through the last 5 years. I regret not having started a family, but knowing that Pete left a vast assortment of clones, the walkers may indeed live on through normal means. One day. Hopefully, my sacrifice did some damage. If not, maybe you can do something better. Think out of the box is all I can say. Good luck, brother. Good luck. A smiling George faded to black. Chapter 4. Pete stared at the monitor for a long while. 20 years. That long. Pete thought, change my name to what? He heard a deep cough, but ignored it. Mike said, may I be of assistance? Pete remained deep in thought. Mike coughed louder, breaking Pete's thoughts. Pete looked up and around. Yes? Mike repeated, may I be of assistance? To what? Your name dilemma. Who said I was thinking about my name? Silence. It stretched out to a full minute. Pete broke the silence first. Damn computer, he thought. Mind reader? Thanks for the offer. Mike said, no, I am not. What? I am not a mind reader. How in the world did you know what I was thinking? Silence. Exasperation crept into Pete's voice. Well, you may not be Pete Prime, but you think like him. I've had 20 years of experience. Pete said, point taken. Silence. Mike, thank you. I want to think this through a few moments. While you're thinking through your name dilemma, I'd like to give you the rest of George's items. Okay. Do not be startled. About what? He heard Mike's voice directly behind him. This, sir. Pete, startled, turned to see an android. Jesus Christ. The android said, my intention was not to startle you. Intention failed. But Pete was intrigued. He got up and walked around the machine. Amazing, he thought. What can it do? The android stood 6 feet tall. Most of its body was made of tubes and wiring. Small composite plates of different shapes were placed around his limbs and chest. They gave the illusion he had calves, biceps, shoulders, and pecs. There were even 2 plates shaped and placed so it looked like he had buttocks. The android answered, It, sir, can do a lot. And it held out a very large envelope. Pete grabbed it. The android held onto the envelope a few seconds longer than it should have. Pete watched as it turned and walked away. Does it have a name? You could ask the next time you see him, Mike replied. I suppose I could. What other surprises are in store for me? There is someone sleeping in your bed. Dumbstruck, Pete dropped the envelope. What? A guest? He walked to his room and stopped. The door was ajar. He pushed it open slowly and stepped into the dimly lit room. A form was curled up underneath the blankets. He stepped in and the floor creaked. The form moved. Then a head lifted up. The covers slipped away to show a dirty blonde woman yawning. She looked around and spotted Pete. "Hey, babe," she said. "You're back so soon. Everything went okay?" Stunned, Pete lost his voice. He coughed and held up a hand. He motioned for her to lay back down while backing out. She did, yawned again, and said, "Okay, babe. See you in a few hours." Pete closed the door and made it back to the command room.
"What the?"
Mike said.
"Her name is Rebecca. George calls her Becky. She is his—"
"What?" Pete interrupted.
"She is also one of those allies George mentioned. But she is unaware that George is no longer here, which, by the way, you are the last to awake upon the death of a previous clone. Oh, this is just getting better and better."
He placed his palm against his forehead and slowly shook his head.
"The envelope." "The what?" "Oh, that."
Pete reached down and grabbed it. He walked over to the center seat, moved the keyboard out of the way, and emptied its contents onto the desk. Photos, a wallet, gun, knife, camera, cell phone, a bottle of pills, a passport, car keys, reading glasses, a folded piece of paper, and a small black box with a wind-up key in the back. He stared at the content for a few seconds.
"Okay, Mike, I'm not getting this. I need help." George started making recordings weeks after he awoke. Number 4, Kevin, gave him a similar recording as George gave you. Kevin left George everything except the reading glasses, bottle of pills, and the small black box. Over time, of course, the contents have increased.
The center monitor lit up with George sitting at the desk. His chair was messy, and he had a 5-day-old beard. His eyes were bloodshot with hooded eyelids.
"This is madness. It's been 2 weeks and I haven't slept well. Kevin, that's the name number 4 chose, said that Forrest's company Forever Life submitted an investigational new drug application to CDER. Apparently, he was going to sabotage the application, but didn't succeed. I woke up 2 weeks ago and binged on all the information about Forrest and Forever Life, Inc. This is crazy. Forrest is our alpha. He was the first successful clone, and we are working against him."
The screen went black. Pete sat there for a few moments thinking. Number 4, presumably, discovered/revealed Forrest as Prime's first successful clone. Incredible. A new image appeared.
"Forrest is out of his mind. He has to be. I see why. Pete Prime broke ties with him and made this place. Transgenetics can transform the entire world to something good. Think about it. A pill that acts as a transport and vector for radical morphologic change. But Forrest has a secret agenda. He wants to make the world shaped in his image."
The screen went black a few seconds, then George reappeared.
"I've been alive for about 6 months now. This world is amazing. Cars that drive themselves, androids, of which I'm going to have to make one. Space travel, vacations in Earth's orbit. Opportunities endless."
The screen went black. Pete heard from behind him. "Hey, babe, you hadn't looked at those old vids for months. What's up?" He slowly turned and saw Becky standing in the doorway. She was dressed in a translucent blue teddy. She had fuzzy rabbit-faced slippers on, and she had bedhead. Pete thought,
"My fucking God, George was one lucky son of a bitch."
She walked up to him and leaned down. Pete regretted he flinched. He bit his lip, but said nothing. Becky frowned, stood up, and carefully gave Pete a once-over. She stared into his eyes, then walked out the room. Pete followed her. Dread set in when he realized she was headed for the cloning chamber. As he entered the room, he spotted her on her knees crying. He stopped just out of arm's reach.
"I'm sorry,"
was all he could say. She turned on him, her eyes red and puffy. "Why?" she screamed at him. "Why are you doing this? Why?" Pete backed up. His shoulders drooped. He looked down. Becky screamed. "This is not fair!" He could do nothing but watch. Suddenly she jumped up and ran over to the door. A heavy axe was attached to the adjacent wall. She pulled it from its cradle and dragged the heavy thing past all the chambers to stop at number 18. Pete realized what she was about to do. He yelled, "Stop! Not yet!" She gave him a death stare and said, "This is total bullshit. All of it is bullshit. Let's just let him take the whole fucking place down and end this madness." He raced to her side just as she lifted the heavy axe over her shoulder. He grabbed the handle on the downswing, stopping her from smashing the glass. She yelled, "Let it go, clone!" Pete's head snapped back. "Let it go, clone," she said. Clone, as in copy, duplicate, not the original. He lost his temper. "Get a hold of yourself, you fucking idiot. This is not about you. It's about the world." He tossed the axe across the room, anger gripped firmly now. "You need to fucking grow up." He stared into her eyes and did not blink. She tried to stare him down, but Pete was too far into his anger to care. Silly bitch, he thought.
"You think I asked to be here?"
Her eyes dropped.
"I'm more than a victim here. I'm 20 years out of date, and everyone I knew is either dead, old, or I can't remember them. I have problems bigger than yours. I am truly sorry George is gone. There are so many questions I need to ask, but all I have is a sensitive computer and you. And from where I'm standing, I'm pretty much fucked."
Becky's eyes teared up. Seconds later, she ran out the room and disappeared down the hallway. Pete sighed heavily. He let his anger cool before he spoke.
"Mike,"
he said, but he got no response.
"Sorry if I offended you."
Mike remained silent. Pete walked over to the axe, grabbed it, and placed it back into its cradle. He walked out the room, sad. All this in less than an hour of his new life. Maybe he should have let her smash the glass. Maybe not. Chapter 5. Pete sat back down in front of the computer screen. He waited several seconds. Nothing.
"Mike, I apologized. I am sorry."
Nothing. Pete counted to 10.
"Mike, please, continue with the videos."
Nothing.
Pete yelled, "God damn it, what do you expect of me? I don't know you and I'm trying to cope here. Give me some answers."
Nothing.
"Fine then. Can you at least give me access to the internet? The internet is still around, right?"
The screen lit up and displayed some icons. Pete clicked on a world icon. The application ran and displayed a blank screen. An empty address bar had a blinking cursor waiting for data. Pete typed in, "search engine." Google appeared. He let out a sigh and said more to himself than to Mike.
"Finally, something I remember."
He typed in, Pete Walker. 37,600,000 results in 0.002 seconds. He added cloning. A Wikipedia entry was at the top of the list. Several pictures of him appeared underneath that. One picture was his face, the rest of what he looked like at 10 years his senior.
"So, I'll start to gray in 10 years?
Then he remembered George only lived for 6. A rather dumb and expensive way to achieve youthful immortality. He clicked on the Wikipedia entry. He, meaning Pete, first died 15 years ago. That meant the average clone life expectancy sucked. He sat back and stared at the contents again. The wallet. Let's start with the wallet. It was brown leather with worn edges, standard twofold with the expected number of credit card slots, all of which were filled with various cards. A platinum Amex in George's name. Nice. A Visa, MasterCard, Discover card. Some food card of sorts. He would have to ask Mike about it later. That is, if the computer started talking to him again. Maybe Becky would be a better source of information now. Maybe. A driver's license with George's face and name on it, and a piece of paper, folded. Pete unfolded the piece of paper. Tonight. Alone. Waterfront Dock 2. 100K. Cloak and dagger. Quaint. The screen lit up, and George's face appeared. He said,
"Thanks, Mike. I'm getting the hang of this. Hey, number 6 and others. Hopefully not others, but anyway, I left you puzzle pieces. Some of the items were left for me. I've added a few new ones. So, now that I have your attention, I'll go through each one. The photos. Very important. Number 6. You are really number 7.
Pete held his breath. George continued.
You know what I'm talking about. I'll assume that others, at some point, will be viewing this in the future. So, forgive me, Brother 6, for stating the obvious between us.
Pete absently nodded.
20 years ago, cloning required the isolation of certain cells, stem cells. Those were the cells used in the process. They could have been any cell in the body, but they had to meet certain criteria. For me, it took 3 months. From the records, it took 4 months for you. Number 18 took 9. Once the right cells are found, they're cultured. These are the base cells used to make all of us, and they do have limits. For one is the shortened telomeres, of which Pete's process negates the negative results. But because of the process, 7 identical clones can successfully be created. After that, we have to modify the geno and phenotypes. Maybe it's nature's way of keeping human vanity at bay. That's why Pete cloned us, after you, as females, kids, and different races. They are us, but also someone else. In a sense, they really are our brothers and sisters. I say all this to stress that, Brother 6, you are the last of the Pete originals. In mind, that went with Pete 3.
Pete said.
Mike, please pause the video.
George's image stopped in mid-speech.
Will you talk to me now? Please?
The silence went on for 3 minutes before Mike said,
I will talk to you now. First, what did I do or say to make you mad at me?
A full minute ticked by.
You made her cry. I see.
He did, actually.
You like Becky.
Pete said it as a statement, not a question. 5 minutes went by.
I do.
Pete nodded.
Understood. I will try not to hurt her feelings again, but because I've only known the both of you for less than 2 hours, please forgive me for any faux pas I may commit going forward. I'm a stranger here.
Mike answered almost immediately.
Understood, sir. May I ask you another question? Certainly. It's about Pete Prime. Please ask. I am here to help. Can you see a difference in me and Pete Prime?
Silence for about 3 minutes. Pete wondered if the silence was the equivalent of a computer sigh or Mike running hundreds, if not thousands, of simulations.
Yes, sir, there is.
Pete held his breath.
You have more patience. Pete Prime was rather impatient. Physical appearance, speech, and gait are identical to a Pete Walker at 39 years old. There hasn't been enough time to discern other differences. Please ask me again in 24 hours.
Pete nodded.
Thank you, Mike. You are welcome, sir. Should I resume the video?
Pete smiled.
Yes, please. Thank you.
This one, he decided, worked best with pleasantries. Incredible, he thought. Totally incredible. Eerily, Mike sounded and acted human. Was it that Mike evolved? Or was he installed with a conscience? Pete decided once Mike got to know him, he would ask.
For some reason, the memory transference changes slightly with each use. That's why I didn't remember Stephanie. Mike has mentioned that with each clone, we seem to be more reflective, more thoughtful. We're not as reactionary as Pete Prime. If you have time, work on it or not.
He smiled.
You can always leave it to our brothers and sisters to ponder over. That is if you,
he coughed,
decide to wake them.
He leaned in close to the screen.
Interesting that you have that option.
His right eyebrow raised up.
I wonder why Pete Prime did that. Are we that much a super genius as to play chess 20 years in the future? By the way, you may have met or not met Becky.
His smile was slight but noticeable. A few seconds later,
more on that later.
He leaned back.
The wallet. I'm sure you've already rifled through it. Nothing special there except that it is 20 years old. Mike can help you get a legal license with proper papers to back everything up. The same for credit cards. Mike, hopefully, started inserting purchase history into the national databases. We have a drop box at the local post office. It's within walking distance, which is good, because it'll help you to learn the streets. Slow is well. Fast is hell."
Pete nodded.
Now the photos. The redhead is Pete Alpha. Pete Prime and Alpha started Forever Life Inc. together. The records show them as twin brothers, one of which was separated at birth, only later to be reunited with family. Good story. Reads like a good mystery.
That smile again.
As you can see, Pete Alpha, now named Forrest, looks nothing like us.
He leaned in close.
That's the power of transgenetics. It really is amazing and powerful, but it is a time bomb. Prolonged usage ultimately changes the phenotype. Very subtle over a period of years, but eventually, the user starts to look like Forrest. Prolonged use also causes sterility. In most cases, the host will be beyond reproductive age anyway. But here's the kicker. At some point, all users will have nearly the same DNA sequence, as in brother, sister, mother, father.
He paused and let that settle in.
At some point in the near future, humans will be inbreeding. Oh, we may figure it out before it is too late, but why take that chance? Through different means, Mike, I, and our brothers have tried to sound the alarm through academic papers, protest, and other means, but $1 billion can go a long way in suppressing the truth.
He shrugged.
The other photos are of staff and his top scientist, Gordon. I'm hoping to eliminate most, if not all. Gordon is the one who really must go. He's the one who put all the pieces together. His assistant, Sandra Spaulding, broke the code, but he figured out the proper sequence for transgenetics to work. Prep the recipient. Introduce modifiers embedded in a pill. The adenoviruses are enclosed in small casings that survive the digestive tract long enough to enter the bloodstream. From there, they find host cells and turn on or off trigger hormones and proteins needed to work the magic. Brother, they change the very nature on how the host cell works and functions. Brilliant, but not without a cost. This is a payment we should never make. Incidentally, I really did mean to come back, but death seems to be irrelevant when you have brothers and sisters who can, at any time, tap into my last thoughts. We all started getting very philosophical about life. It would be nice to think that I died of old age and forgot to update this recording, in which case, Forrest was stopped and the world went about its busy life. Existentialism is pretty heavy stuff. We are all individuals who just happens to spring from the same well. Our very existences precede essence, brother. From here forward, you are who you are. Seriously, you'll have to stop thinking of yourself as Pete. Forrest did. Kevin did. I did. Our brothers and sisters will certainly think so. It's your turn. Which brings me to that small black box.
George lowered his head.
Of course, if you're looking at this, I never did make it back.
He took a deep breath.
The box is for Becky, which, hopefully, you two have met already and hopefully things have not gotten too weird. Read what I wrote and please give her the box. I'll trust you to know when and where.
He cleared his throat after several moments of silence.
The bottle of pills is from pre-trials. Kevin was able to get a hold of them. I left you enough to study. The gun is special, 3D printed and holds 10 shots, 8 now. It is completely detection-proof. The passport is mine, of course. Mike will get you a new one. It'll take a few months. The glasses you'll need later. Trust me.
He winked.
Once you get your license, you'll need to get around. Becky can help with that. Our car is the latest model and essentially needs no driver. You'll find out later. Google made good on their threat on making driverless cars a reality, and the world is a safer place for it. The knife, well, that is the same as the gun. I've used it twice. Don't ask.
He smiled.
I said Google made the world a safer place, not the neighborhoods. That's something different. What? All those years learning martial arts and you thought you'd never need it? The future is great, but it is far from utopia. Not quite dystopia, but damn close. Despite one political party trying very hard not letting the other political party drive us into the ground, we still got there. The economic divide is bigger than ever. Becky can best instruct in that. And the cell phone, it's to Forrest. I'm going to leave it at that. Talk to Becky about it. But remember this. Enemies of my friends may not be my enemies. The camera has my latest shots of the Forrest building. Probably useless now, but...
He shrugged.
There are other Easter egg videos I left. Some relevant, some not, some total bullshit. 6 years is a long time for us, brother. Live yours and then some. After Pete Prime passed, Pete too went into total isolation. He left one day to confront Forrest. That was after Pete 4 years. Never came back. The newsfeed says he was struck by a car, killed instantly. Pete 3 lived longer, died 7 AP. He studied Forrest, even challenged him. He met a horrible and lonely death. Kevin lived longer to 15 AP. If you're getting this last addendum to this video, you're at 21 AP. There is one last thing.
George seemed to be considering his words.
There is a memory all of us cannot remember. It's a pinpoint of thought that just nags at us. Mike can't or won't explain it. The data records only show that something was there. Pete Prime removed a piece of his memory from the process. Maybe you'll be the one to uncover it.
The screen went blank. Pete sighed.
Mike? Yes, sir. What do you think?
Silence. Pete stared at the screen for about 2 minutes. Kevin appeared. Pete could tell it was him, but not him and not George. They really did seem to be different.
Number 3 was captured. The drugs, unofficially, made human trials that day. Transgenetics was able to break through initial FDA testing because Forever Life Inc. had the perfect subject, Pete 3. From what I can uncover, they kept him alive for a year. I remember being woken up 4 times, only to be placed back in hyper at least 4 times. Mike tells me he could not control the process. He had to let the safeguards take control when the system received some life telemetry from number 3. He died 4 times, and they brought him back for more testing. Bastards.
The screen went blank.
I see,
Pete said. He sat staring at a blank screen for a while. Mike finally said,
Pete, it is time for dinner.
Pete reached over to the black box. He opened it and took out the note. Tears streamed down his cheek as he read the note. Several drops hit the paper and slightly stained some of the letters. He folded it back up and placed it back in the box. After he wound the small turnkey at the back, he got up and made his way to the kitchen. Chapter 6. Pete walked into the kitchen area. The table had been set for 2. A vase and some amethyst were placed in the center. Becky sat at one end. She said, I was hoping you'd make it here before I started eating. Pete noticed she did not begin with, hey babe. He sat down, still holding the small black box, the box George meant to give her, his special gift of love. He had planned to return, maybe. So many branches of what-ifs. Mostly all bullshit and wishful thinking, but a few had legs, if given the chance to run. He sat down and placed the box on the table next to a glass of water. Becky eyed the box but didn't say a thing. She said, Mike, ready. The android walked up to the table holding a bowl of salad in each hand. He placed one in front of Becky and the other in front of Pete, turned, and walked away. Becky said, His name is Prax. She pronounced it Prax. Pete said,
Prax.
The android paused on its way toward the kitchen cooking area. Pete continued.
As in praxis? Action?
She nodded. Most appropriate, one would think. She raised her left brow and gave him a slight smile. Prax resumed walking into the kitchen. Pete blushed and smiled back. He looked around, wondering what to say next. He thought,
You are a social clod.
Becky's smile broadened and she lifted the salad fork. Pete grabbed the dinner fork. He always thought one needed a fork with the longest teeth to get as much leaf as possible. Becky stifled a laugh. Pete looked up.
What?
Becky smiled. Nothing. Use whatever you like to eat salad. It's not like the arrangement is some form of artistic post-neo-functionalism. Pete stabbed some romaine and red cabbage cuts. The dressing was perfect. Not thick enough to mask the taste, but thin enough to not be tasted.
This is delicious. Thank you.
Becky finished chewing, said, Don't thank me. Prax and Mike have been cooking for us for years. Pete forced his smile. Been cooking for years, she said. Been cooking for us.
Becky, I'm sorry I lost my temper.
Already forgotten. Moving forward, okay? Pete paused for a moment. Just like that? Forgotten? She nodded. Yes, just like that. She stabbed salad, scooped it into her mouth, and started chewing. She never took her eyes off him. Pete swallowed hard and grabbed the glass of water and drank deeply. He patted his lips and pretended to be amused by tablecloth lint. Becky said, I'm not a mind reader, but I do have the advantage. She thought he was just like George the first day they met. Then her smile vanished. Damn you, George. You left me. Will all this be worth it in the end? She sighed. What's in the black box? Pete stared into her eyes. Pressure gripped his heart. Vice-squeezing pressure crushed hard. Tears welled up. He grabbed the box, got up from the table, and walked it over to her. He laid the box carefully next to the glass of water. He sat back down and finished his salad quietly. Becky placed the fork down and eyed the box. She lifted the lid and pulled out the note first. The little fairy stood up and twirled slowly as a lovely, sweet song tinked on.
My dearest Becky, in all my lives, I don't think I have ever been happiest. You kept me going. You supported me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. On the days I doubted my own existence, you applied logic and passion. I am forever grateful for your love, and I truly am sorry that I am gone. Temporarily. If number 6 is giving you this, then everything went terribly wrong. I did mean to return, but... And we talked about this often. The waiter brought me my check. Luckily, you fell in love with a man with cat lives. I'll wake up in the morning and forget who I am, but will have you to remind me what it is worth fighting for. Please forgive me, and don't be mad at me, or me. I am just a stranger in a strange land now, and I need a guiding hand, a calm heart, and a cool head to help get through and beyond this. Eternal love, George.
Becky cried. Tears of pain, anger, sorrow, and love. She took the napkin and dabbed at her wet eyes. Then she noticed some of the letters were blurred from recent tears. She looked up. You read this? Pete sat staring at a woman he hadn't known long enough to love, but knew he could. It was all that easy, yet all that hard.
I am a man who has forgotten, he thought. Will I remember? Will I want to remember? Sorry, but George asked me to. Something wrong?
Becky finished wiping her eyes dry. She took a sip of water and said, Prax? The android stepped up to the table.
Yes, ma'am.
Wine, please. Red. Your choice. Prax said,
Yes, ma'am. A good spica seems to be in order.
He turned and walked away. Becky reached into the box and pulled out a small medallion. It was the one George promised her years ago. He found it. A Beatles Cavern Club medal. Practically priceless now. She placed it back in the box and sighed. A few seconds later, she heard a familiar pop. Prax emerged from the kitchen holding a bottle marked with the label, Fat Bastard. He poured a healthy dose into both glasses and left. Becky held up the glass and said, To life. Pete hastily picked his up, nearly spilling it, and said,
To life.
Both drank. Becky's was more so to feel numb. Pete to not feel awkward. So, Becky began, have you thought about a name yet?
Name?
She nodded. Pete, you are not, and it has been taken.
But I am.
He paused.
Pete? No, I am not Pete. George said it took him months to pick a name.
She nodded. I met him a few months after that.
So why am I more accepting of changing my name?
Very good question. Could be you are so far removed from the Pete. George said number 1 took a different name, but 2 and 3 didn't. You know about Pete Alpha? Pete nodded.
Forrest, our nemesis, it seems.
Kevin understood.
And so did George?
She nodded. Prax removed the now empty bowls. A minute later, he came back with a tray of sizzling, thin, cut-short ribs nested on a bed of sautéed, thin, sliced onions, mushrooms, bell, and chili peppers. He shoveled half the amount on Pete's plate and the rest onto Becky's. He placed a small heap of white rice next to the meat and left chopsticks. Pete stared down at his plate. Becky moved some hair behind an ear. "You do remember how to use chopsticks?" He smiled.
"Yeah, I do."
"Then why the hesitation? It is dead."
"This is my second meal of my new life."
He looked up and caught Becky staring back. She smiled briefly, looked down, and picked up a piece of meat with her chopsticks. She tore off a piece of meat from the bone with her teeth and chewed slowly. The meat was tender and seemed to melt into a delicious taste of savory and sweet sauce. A bit of chili pepper emerged, but didn't distract as much as add to the flavor. Pete tasted the meat and an explosion of salt, sugar, vinegar, a dozen spices, and hotness swirled across his tongue. His eyes watered as he slowly chewed the soft meat.
"Wow,"
he whispered. Becky said, "I envy you. Person who is not George but will soon change his name to something nice I could like." Pete laughed. He liked Becky.
"How so?"
"You've come into the world as an adult."
"I missed being a kid."
Becky paused in mid-bite. She scowled. "You do?"
"Why, does that surprise you?"
"Person who is not George but will soon change his name to something nice I could like. George said he hated his childhood."
"Interesting."
Becky nodded. "How can two people of the same have different views on childhood?" Pete thought about that. He finished half the rice and a third of his main meal.
"My childhood. That's not right. The childhood I remember was tough. But as a kid, I had very little responsibility."
Becky nodded.
"Yeah, I had to learn, and my parents pushed an overachieving kid to continue stretching the envelope. I could just be."
He bit into a chili pepper and quickly followed it with some onions and bell pepper. The wine helped, but barely. He took his napkin and dabbed at the sweat forming on his forehead. Becky thought it cute that person who was not George but will soon change his name to something nice she could like wiped his forehead. She really did envy him, but she also pitied him. He woke to a world distressed and in need of healing. He wasn't the doctor, but maybe one of the meds prescribed. If only she could leave and start over, like maybe one of the new colonies starting up. She finished her plate and placed the chopsticks down. Prax stood ready. He focused on the clone and waited for him to finish eating. When the clone seemed to have had enough of the main meal, he collected the dishes. Mike gave him instructions via a wireless link. One in particular was simple: observe. This one was like the others physically, but different in several ways. Its movements were more graceful. It didn't move in fits and starts like the original and clone 2 and 3. This one was more like the alpha. Becky nodded when she noticed the person who was not George, but will soon change his name to something nice she could like, placed his chopsticks down. The rice gone, the meat and veggies consumed. His wine glass drained, his water glass drained. Prax took his cue from Mike and cleared the table. He placed the dishes in the sink and walked over to a very large refrigerator. Dessert had already been prepared: cucumber and lemon lime sorbet with a sprinkle of sea salt. Dollops of pureed mint and sugar were placed on the side. Becky watched as the person who is not George, but will soon change his name to something nice, slowly dropped his jaw. He closed his mouth and swallowed audibly. Prax backed away and watched the clone closely. He monitored heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature. The clone picked up the spoon and scraped a small amount of sorbet into it. It lifted the spoon to its mouth. Tears pooled at the bottom of its eyes. It took a larger amount of sorbet and placed it in its mouth. The clone's body visibly relaxed. Its body temperature dropped to 97.1, heart rate to 72, respiration 10, blood pressure 110/70. From the expression on the clone's face, Prax reasoned it was content. Chapter 7.
"Kent."
Becky said. "Pardon?" After dinner, the two had moved to the living room. It was a large area with a circular fireplace set in the center. A fire was burning, and the wire mesh cage encompassing the pit kept most of the occasional burning embers from jumping too far from the fire. The two sat on a semicircular couch near the fireplace. Pete felt comfortable enough to allow Becky to rest in his arms. Mike was halfway through playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, piano number 14. The two had lazily reclined on the couch, gazing into the fire.
Kent, that's my new name.
Becky mused over that. Kent, Kent, Kent. Maybe. Kent reminded her of a certain mild-mannered reporter. Kent. It was easy off the tongue. Kent. She smiled. Kent. She did like it. It meant he was more than the eye could see. Kent. Okay, Kent. Nice to meet you. My name is Elizabeth, but my inner circle calls me Becky. I'd like you to be part of that circle. Pete, who was now Kent, blushed.
I'd like to be part of that inner circle.
He took a deep breath.
Hi, Becky. My name is Kent. Nice to know you. I used to be a clone. Now I am my own person.
Hello, own person, Kent. The silence lingered as piano number 14 played on in the background at a presto agitato. Many fast arpeggios and strongly accented notes echoed off the walls. The two stared into each other's eyes.
I'm not George.
She nodded.
You okay with that?
She nodded again and moved closer. She nestled herself against his chest and didn't care who he was. She could dream. That was the important part. Kent was at first startled that Becky moved closer. He hadn't expected her to get so close into his personal space, but then again, he looked and sounded like George. Probably acted like him too. It surprised him even more when she kissed him, and he returned it without complaint. Prax turned and left the room. Mike decreased the airflow to the fireplace, letting the fire die down. He turned the vents on and dropped the room's temperature by 2 degrees. He hoped they would get the hint. The bedroom was one of the few places he did not have cameras installed.
Thank you for listening to this part of Enemy Me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, please comment below about a favorite part of the story. Click on the notification button to make sure you don't miss the next part of Enemy Me. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue to grow. Until then.
I look in the mirror and I see the thing that scares me. The face looks back and I know it's me, enemy me, the one I fight. Looking through many eyes to make things right. I watch over my many selves, planning to attack the one self. Dying again and again and again, only to awake and begin from the end of a self. I'm my worst enemy.